Let me tell you this one, Kristen, and that probably fits in that category, in my opinion. So I already told you and your listeners that we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. Then for about a month behind our house, about 30 feet away, maybe, was a schoolyard, and about 25 Canadian soldiers from the Canadian Army Red Cross were there supporting the Canadian Army. But we would do every morning, we would go down there as little kids because we had not had food, and they gave us bread with cheese and butter, and the cheese and the butter was bigger than the bread. And we called everybody Johnny. We didn't speak the language, but we did. And that made that immense impression. So that led me to then from that point forward, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. So those 25 people that were there for about a month and a half made an immense impression. So then when I came to Canada, and here to Prince George, virtually on the other side of the world. And I became a superintendent of a sawmill. I got to know the sales manager of that mill, and I was very nervous because I didn't quite speak the language. And he invited me to his house. I was single then, obviously young and working hard, but becoming a management employee, being a superintendent. So he invited me to his house for dinner. And his name was Jerry Wilmot. And so I went to his house on a Friday. I was very, very nervous and formally with his wife and me sitting there for dinner. And we talked about Holland and we talked about him and his wife and his family. He had a lumber mill here in Prince George, and he was in the Canadian Army. And he was the captain in that unit of 25 people in Holland.
Oh my gosh.
And then today, that I'm sitting here on my boardroom in our main office of our lumber mill that I started here 50 years ago in July of 1975 on this location by the railroad. There was another mill located here on this location. And the title of the mill was Norman M. Smith. And the owner of Norman M. Smith, Captain Jerry Wilmot.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't even believe that.
Yeah, I know. And I'm a realist. These things are not supposed to happen, but they did.
Wow. I I mean, I just kind of am speechless right now because that is astonishing. I mean, just imagining you as children and just having to go to the rail yard every day to try to find whatever you could to stay warm or whatever you could to eat anything. And then you have the Canadians come in and liberate. But not only that, they set up behind your house and you go to them every day, and all of a sudden you're having these incredible luxuries like these giant pats of butter and these giant slices of cheese and it's almost like a dream, I'm sure as children, like not believable. Um Something out of a dream. And then, your life goes on. The Canadians, go back to Canada or wherever they go. You have this dream and desire to go to Canada because of this experience of the Canadians. And then you end up in this place where the captain of those 25 men is there. And just the It's almost like poetry.
And he had pictures of our houses and all those things. I took them with me to Holland and showed them to my parents and my mom. And yeah, that were right behind our house.
I am sure your mother actually couldn't believe it because I
No,
don't.
no. It is unbelievable. And then to meet him here, now today where we are, Norman M. Smith was a small mill that operated on exactly the same footprint where today our head office is in northern British Columbia. But this was owned up to 1964 by Captain Jerry Wilmot.
John, you were blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm listening to this story and there's just this beautiful synchronicity running through all of it and this connection. It's like this connection, you form this connection with these Canadian soldiers and then later in life you find yourself at dinner, no less, with your supervisor and you have this conversation. I'm sure your supervisor was equally just astounded.
Yeah, but we didn't make the connection then in terms of the mill yet, because I didn't know, so yeah, I hadn't even started then. And this was 1965. It would not be until 10 years later that I started this operation, not realizing this was Norman M. Smith and it was owned by Captain Jerry Wilmot.
I mean, I'm sure his wife was sitting at the table thinking, what is happening here? And this is just miraculous. I'm kind of just my jaw is dropped here, and I just think to myself, it's almost like everything was fated for you to leave and come to Canada and then have this not reconciliation, but just reconnection with this part of your childhood where you were essentially liberated and saved by Canadian forces at the time. I mean, my gosh, I mean, how did you even deal with thinking about all this?
It's not supposed to happen. I'm a realist, right? So these things don't happen, but they do.